but we were using it to almost like will death onto human trafficking. We were using it to wish that modern slavery and human trafficking would end. A lot of people misunderstand the concept of death, which is represented in the 13th tarot card. Tarot cards come from, they're the basis for the Torah, which is the basis for the Bible, which it's, with every translation, it got more and more skewed and corrupted. So tarot cards are actually a lesser corrupted version of these ancient fire symbols that our other cultures had. So we were in this group meditation, and we used this skull to just change the consciousness of human trafficking. 4 months later to 6 months later, the entire world was like on lockdown from the COVID virus. And that could have just been a coincidence, but we were all like not allowed to really go anywhere. So travel stopped. Human trafficking probably stopped, or not stopped, it probably lessened because of travel stopping. And it wasn't our intention to will death onto people. It was our intention to will death onto modern slavery, which is disguised, which is why people misunderstand death. People think we have 12 months out of the year, but in reality we have 13 lunar cycles out of the year.
The concept of 13 is in the original tale of Sleeping Beauty, where Maleficent represents the 13th fairy, or the 13th lunar cycle of the year or month, which the word month originally comes from moon, even though we only have 12 months out of the year. Maleficent is not invited to the ceremony because she is a representation of liberation, change, and even death. And because she's not invited, she curses the king's firstborn daughter with unnatural death in her youthful years before she hits her menstruation. This is a warning of parents who don't let their daughters grow up and become women, and who are afraid of their first period, which is a representation of her becoming a woman, and also a lesson about a king who doesn't want his structural system to change because he's afraid. So he tries to keep change out, and the result is that he actually ends up inviting death by blocking change, by preventing what is necessary and letting go of what needs to be let go of. So this is ancient Celtic knowledge, ancient knowledge from matriarchal cultures all over the world, where women's periods either revolve around a new moon or a full moon, and it's usually a sign of health when your period is consistent around the moon. Women that I know, and me personally and my sister, our periods are consistently based on the cycles of the moon, and that's not a myth. That's how our bodies are designed. And in the period cycle, women go through all stages of basically youthfulness, motherhood, and death, basically the hag phase or the crone phase, all in 1 month.
Yeah, so this is 12, and then the 13th is the what's containing everything, which is a construct. So 12 realms and then 13, which contains everything. This is where you get the cycles of time, right? And the cycles of event markers. Everything, we base it off 12, but it's really supposed to be based off 13 cycles and stuff like that.
The Mayans also had at least 2 different systems of numbering. One which was a secular way to number things, and one which is a sacred numbering system. The secular numbering system was based on 10, similar to our own, and the sacred numbering system was based on 13. So just like you have hexadecimal, which is based on 16, you can convert any number into any base. It would just change the entire way we count, and it's mainly for convenience because we have 10 fingers to count on, which is why we do base 10. Their basic numbering system was a set of lines and dots, and very simplistic compared to their pictographic skull 13 numbering system. Unlike their base 10 numbering system, their base 13 numbering system was a series of pictorial hieroglyphs.
My point is that 13, the number 13 in our culture, is seen as evil because we are a culture of slavery. And 13, death, is not what people think it is. Death does not represent dying and no longer existing, it actually represents life. If used in it, so you will death the same way you will life. If you want to focus on bringing life into this world in a very conscious and loving manner, then you also have to focus on what you allow to die or what you wish to die in the same type of regard. So that is the way to use death. So this misunderstanding of like death being this the skulls and all this stuff being like the culture of death. The culture of death is actually a culture of slavery that doesn't allow death when it's necessary in order for new life to exist, or in order for life to exist in a more authentic and higher state of being. Because when you have a culture that doesn't allow things to die, you actually create a zombie society of people who are like living dead. They're walking dead. They're breathing. Their heart's beating, but the actual way they're living is in depression. It's in sadness. It's in slavery, and it's in fear. And so this is what my first experience with this crystal skull is. It opened up my whole consciousness, but it wasn't right away. It wasn't like a big epiphany. I looked at this skull and suddenly I realized everything. It had this very slow effect, and over the course of 3 years, I became very conscious. So really, when you use death in a way that kills things that are causing death. So we were using this skull to wish death to modern slavery, international trafficking. We were saying, hey, this is too much. This has gotten out of hand, and we need to stop this. International trafficking is disguised as orphanages, charities for children, helping people. It's disguised. It's very covertly disguised in our culture. The thing about it is, I realized that the 13th Amendment in our country, the last time we had a civil war, was when we tried to end slavery. So we tried to free slavery, and the 13th Amendment attempted to end slavery. And it's funny that that's the 13th Amendment. That's number 13, because death doesn't represent what people think it represents. It represents liberation. A lot of times, when you allow things to die that need to die, you actually have more life, higher quality of life.
Conquerors of death and masters of life. Aye, ye shall learn of the flower of Amenti, the blossom of life that shines in the halls. In spirit shall ye reach that halls of Amenti, and bring back the wisdom that liveth in light. Know ye the gateway to power is secret. Know ye the gateway to life is through death. Aye, through death, but not as ye know death, but a death that is life, and a fire that is light.
So you get rid of the causes of death. And so it's just this cycle. It's a circle of life. It's not good or bad. We have life. We also have death, which is in a lot of Native American cultures, the word for seed is the same thing as the word for bone. It's like a skeleton. So they don't view death as the end. They view it as making way for life. This is common sense stuff, but this culture got so out of touch with nature that we forgot, that, hey, 13 isn't an unlucky number. 13, in some people, is a very lucky number, because especially if you're a slave, if you're working in a state of slavery, or you're unhappy and you're being oppressed, the number 13 is a very good number. It's supposed to symbolize change, liberation, which is also associated with the death tarot card. I don't think it was a coincidence that the world was shut down with the coronavirus 4 to 6 months later after this meditation. I think that this crystal skull is actually related to the reawakening of our crystal computer consciousness, which is what we're using in our technology. We're using quartz crystals.